Welcome to Tech in Translation, the podcast where we break down the complexities of today's most innovative technologies into something we can all understand.
Brought to you by Ironbow Technologies, a next-generation solutions provider. We're committed to helping our customers across the government, education, commercial, and healthcare sectors turn their tech challenges into real, actionable outcomes.
At Ironbow, we believe that technology should be a tool for empowerment, not a source of confusion.
That's why each episode of Tech in Translation is designed to demystify the latest trends, tools, and technologies, making them accessible for everyone, whether you're a seasoned professional or just tech curious.
Join us as we translate complex tech into everyday language, one episode at a time.
Welcome back to Tech in Translation. I'm your host, Tom Wooten. Today we're exploring how new technologies are redefining the way we work, moving beyond just emails and virtual meetings to truly empower teams. Joining us is Dan Clanderman, Director of Workforce Experience here at Ironbow. Dan, tell us about your role in helping organizations create better, more productive work environments through technology.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, our practice is really about workforce experience, and that today primarily includes technologies around collaboration, voice over IP, video conferencing, and things of that like, which obviously over the last few years has become a very important part of how organizations communicate and build teams.
Interesting. So we've come a long way from just email chains and virtual meetings. Why is it so important for businesses to rethink their technology stack to improve the workforce experience today?
Tom, I think it's really because, employees' expectations have changed as to what tools they need to actually work. When we think about work in years past, you and I are probably roughly the same age. I think we both entered the workforce when we were still passing around paper memos, and emails were kind of like this new and exciting thing. But I think, the technology has changed a lot since then, and people use these types of tools in their day-to-day communication with their friends and with their family. And they think, why can't they use those at work? So I think we definitely have gotten to the point now where a lot of the tools that people are just, expecting to be able to use elsewhere, they want to be able to use at work as well.
It's interesting that you say the employee expectations, not to divulge ages, but you and I go back a ways. It seems kind of outside the norm for an employee to come in and, I expect to be able to do this, versus this is what the business expects you to use. How have you seen that kind of paradigm shift?
Yeah, that's definitely a big paradigm shift. I think it's, if you really go back just a few years when we looked at when we had the start of the pandemic, right? And we were all forced to work from home. It might have been something that, a lot of people had never done before. And they started, building up their home office to be the perfect place for them to work. And I think that's when all of a sudden people saw that they had the flexibility to create this, perfect work environment, this perfect desktop with 3 monitors or whatever they actually needed to do their job. And then you compare that to the way that they were being forced to work in their organization. You're given a 15-inch monitor that goes with a desktop computer under the table, and you have a desk phone. There was just very different expectations that came after that when they're like, this is what I've been using for the last 2 years. I want to be able to use that in my office as well.
I do see how organizational leadership has accepted some of these changes, and they're going, okay, well, that actually does help us be more productive. But with the new tools emerging, what are the biggest shifts nowadays you're seeing on how teams work and collaborate?
Yeah, Tom, I think what we've really started to see within collaboration is this not necessarily movement away from dedicated applications for collaboration. Those are still important. They will always be important. But I think what we've started to see are applications like tools that employees are using for other things. Think about tools like Salesforce or, in the case of a hospital, an electronic medical record type of program. We're now seeing more and more of these collaboration tools get embedded into those tools.
Like Swiss Army knives, multi-purpose type of things.
Correct. So rather than having to swivel chair from my collaboration application over to my EMR or from my collaboration application over to Salesforce, those collaboration tools are being built directly into those applications so I can stay within the application and not get distracted. If that makes sense.
So kind of a one-stop shop.
A one-stop shop.
When I hear that, it's kind of like again, we're going back a little bit in time, but your multifunction device as far as your printers. When you have your printer, scanner, fax, all that kind of stuff. But yet when you have one component start to malfunction, it possibly messes up the whole. Do you see that with some of these one-stop shop with the collaboration software integrated into these other applications?
No, I don't think you see that so much, because I think the people that are bringing you those tools, they know that they need functions like that to be able to work, or else you're going to totally kill the adoption of that platform. So there is just like the phone that may or may no longer be on your desk, it has to ring when somebody's trying to call me. Employees are going to expect that those tools that you introduce that are built into those applications that you're using work consistently, because if they don't, they're going to go out and find some other way to do their
You're
work.
going to find something that does.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's focus a little bit on the collaboration. Virtual meetings obviously are important, but they're not the whole picture. What tools are helping teams collaborate more effectively, especially in hybrid and remote environments?
Yeah, I think it's important to think of collaboration as a continuum of modes of communication. So there's going to be synchronous communication, such as voice calls, video calls, things of that nature, as well as asynchronous means. And I'm not necessarily going to downplay the importance of email. That's a really important asynchronous type of communication. Obviously, it's very ubiquitous, but that would be an example of an asynchronous form of communication. I think what we see is things like messaging and chat. They tend to escalate to like a one-on-one type of interaction for like a phone call or a video call. And if all things go as planned, that will eventually result in some sort of a meeting, right? Like, I think so many times we consider that the only way that you and I can interact with one another is that we're going to schedule a meeting and have a call, right? And that's not necessarily the best way to have a regular work experience with others. Innovation doesn't happen on a schedule. I may have a great idea. I reach out to you. We need to be able to think, work on this quickly because the idea just could be gone, or maybe there's some other time sensitive thing. So the idea of being able to, like, you and I to communicate, one-on-one in a very like, hey, do you have 5 minutes for us to talk? No, but I will in 10 minutes. Okay, let's just hop on a call, rather than let's put this off for a week when we both have some time on the schedule, right? We want to be able to work.
Get it while it's fresh.
Get it while it's fresh. Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, we've all in this industry heard the jokes about, well, we're going to have a meeting about planning the meetings about meetings. So how can we get actually work done in meetings versus talking about work seamlessly in meetings?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that, and it was a lot easier to realize when you were actually, all of us were still in the office, right? There was the meeting that was scheduled, and then there were the things that happened before the meeting, and then there were things that happened after the meeting. So the people that happened to be in the room 5 minutes before, maybe they were talking about something that the people that joined that meeting weren't privy to, right? Because we weren't part of the official meeting.
Right.
And then as soon as the meeting ends, people go, start going back to their desk, and two or three of us
some lag behind. Yeah.
Some lag behind. And all of a sudden you start having these conversations around things that should have been discussed in the meeting, but they weren't. And that became a lot more difficult when we started looking at everybody being virtual, or even if you look at today's age, I think there's something like 85% of most meetings are going to have at least one remote participant. I mean, so that one person typically not being able to participate in the pre-meeting or the post-meeting, right?
Yeah.
So all of these different, modes of communication and how they work together kind of allow you to capture more of that type of innovative experience that potentially have in a meeting.
Interesting. Unfortunately, there is that piece. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it and depending on where you are. Because if you're that one remote person that joins in and it's like, okay, call's done, you hang up like, cool, I'm out of the meeting, I'm done. You don't really have visibility onto everything else that's being discussed. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I've also been that person that's like, I get a lot of tasks assigned to me because I wasn't the one in the room and no one else wanted to do things. So, well, assign him over there because, well, that's what he gets, type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's pivot over to automation. We hear a lot about automation. We hear a lot about AI. We hear about ways to make things more efficient. So, automation is reducing repetitive tasks across industries. How are tools like AI and automated workflows helping teams focus on more strategic and creative work?
Within the collaboration space, we have seen AI being used for a number of years, and probably not in ways that most people think are obvious. So, for example, the meeting room technology that you may be participating in years ago, in order for the camera to pan to whoever's speaking, somebody would actually have to be driving that separately, right? Somebody with a joystick or a keyboard and mouse moving the camera based on who is speaking. And thanks to things like machine learning, a lot of that technology has become automated in such a way that it recognizes that there are faces in the room. It recognizes that there are people that are talking. It puts together that audio with that video, and then will automatically frame whoever the video system thinks is actually speaking. So a lot of that automation now starts to make that meeting more of an equitable meeting for everybody. We can actually focus on who the person is speaking. I think the other area where we've seen AI make significant improvements is just in audio quality. So we've seen people or we've seen devices where they're leveraging AI to recognize that there are background sounds that are repetitive. For example, you're in a meeting, the dog's barking outside, right? Machine learning knows that that dog's barking. They probably don't want that sound in the meeting, so we can eliminate that sound in real time.
See, that's interesting because when you have technology like that, I mean, typically that task and burden would fall upon network admins to ensure that quality of service was enabled for this particular stream, and make sure that, video was prioritized higher than this, that, or the other stream of data. And so basically what you're telling me is your endpoints are doing that almost on the fly now.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, even on the network side, we're starting to see some of the algorithms being enhanced by AI to where the device at the remote side can detect that packets were lost and actually rebuild the conversation so that nothing was actually missed when it was being said. So we're seeing really incredible changes to technology that to the average user is just going to be lost on them, right? They don't even notice that it's actually being used to enhance their experience.
Huh. Okay, let's jump back for a moment to the one-stop shop, the all-in-one type of software or applications that we're using. We're seeing multiple instances of this. One-stop shop, multiple instances of one-stop shop kind of contradicts each other, but regardless. How do these platforms actually improve productivity and reduce tool fatigue for employees?
Yeah, so I think for example, some of the things that have really made our lives a lot easier is when we start seeing the integration just of launching into these meetings or various conversations directly from within our calendar. So for example, you invite me to a meeting on a particular platform within my calendar. There's a link that I click, it automatically opens up the proper application, gets me into the call, and we're able to have a call. There wasn't a lot of things for me to have to try to figure out, like, I have to go download this client and it has to be on this version, all that stuff. That link that's automatically built into the meeting invite.
Please wait while we update your client.
Exactly, yeah. Now, when you start to look at the platforms that are seeing the most success, it is the ones that are making it easiest on the user to be able to flip from a meeting on one platform that ended at 12:02 when I should have been on this 12 o'clock meeting that started 2 minutes ago. I click the link and now I'm being led into the right application again. Whereas before that might have been like something that would take me at least 5 to 10 minutes to set up. It just makes it a lot easier for me if I've got back to back types of meetings and meetings scheduled that may or may not all be on the same platform.
I mean, you've kind of answered this question, but dig into it a little bit more specifically if you can. And so how do leaders choose the right productivity tools that fit their team's specific needs?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important conversation. I think what we've seen over the years are people have their favorite platforms and they just tend to select those as the ones that they think would be best for the team. I think what we really need to go back and look at the requirements of the individuals that are within the organization, look at the requirements that the teams have, recognize that a platform or a tool that we prescribe for one particular group may not necessarily be the same tool that would be good for another team who's working a different way. And are we able to leverage the same platform, but are there APIs, SDKs that we can use to evolve that experience to meet the requirements of one team over another team?
Okay. I know I'm jumping back and forth, but let's step back to automation again. Automation specifically surrounding AI. AI isn't just a buzzword. It's actively helping teams make better decisions and work smarter. So how are AI tools being used to drive engagement, improve workflows, or even predict productivity bottlenecks?
Yeah, Tom, in the area of collaboration, I think it's important to recognize that AI is having an impact not just on the end users, but also on the administrators as well who are out there supporting those platforms. If you think about the resources involved in managing a large enterprises, having AI at the disposal of telling an admin that, within a certain area, a certain time of day, or a certain geography, we're having significant issues, and bubble that up to their attention allows them to focus on tasks and not have to worry about looking at too many details. Letting the AI actually provide them some data generally so that they know where to start looking for some of the problems that they may be having.
So what would be a practical way that organizations can start incorporating AI into their workforce tools today?
Yeah, Tom, I think most of the modern applications that we're leveraging for collaboration and the like have some AI capabilities built into them. I think it's important for leaders to understand what those capabilities are, what's happening to their data, and really give these tools a shot and give these tools a chance, perhaps doing a small proof of concept, identifying whether or not the platform's built-in AI capabilities are going to suit their needs, or whether they have to leverage another AI type tool and do an integration between another AI tool and their platform.
Let's shift over to the employee experience. We talked a little bit about employees and their expectations in the workforce, but we know that technology just isn't about productivity. It's also about creating a better experience for employees. So what role does tech play in improving engagement, satisfaction, and retention?
Yeah, Tom, we spend a lot of our time in virtual meetings and in front of a display. Obviously, these tools are great at being able to bring teams together, but we do experience a bit of meeting fatigue depending on the tools that we've selected. However, I think with the proper tools put in place, with the proper equipment and the proper applications, we can definitely see employees being able to work more closely together with each other, being able to connect with different types of people within the organization. And then that leads to a deeper sense of just satisfaction with the job as in whole. I think, most people don't want to get to the end of the day and feel like they've accomplished nothing. And I think the technology is what allows us to really communicate with other parts of our organization so that we can actually feel like we've accomplished something.
Okay, well, so then how can organizations balance the implementation of these new tools while avoiding tech overload for their people, for their employees?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that it's a marathon and not a sprint. I think customers really need to build a plan that for the future of what they want their communication strategy, collaboration strategy to look like, and build it in such a way that it can be revisited over time as they see their needs shift. I think it's important for organizations to invest in proofs of concept that they can open up to a limited user pool, test with that group, and then identify whether or not it's something that makes sense to roll out to the larger part of the organization. I think it's also important to recognize that adoption and training are really important components of success, and making sure that that's actually part of the implementation plan. Once we've finished installing it, what do we do on day 2? It's going to be just as much something we measure our success against when we start looking at how the tool is actually being used. I think it's important also to make sure that employees know where to find the information, and we know what it is that we're going to need to do to support them after we've deployed it.
Dan, can you share a real-world success story where a company moved beyond the basic tools and dramatically improved how their teams worked and collaborated?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of this within the area of customer experience and contact centers and things of that nature, where they have traditionally, a lot of our customers had traditionally had most of their customer experience being telephony type dial-in. And now when you start to look at the modern contact center and the modern customer experience applications, they're leveraging multi-channel type of communication means, whether that's through chat or whether that's through messaging or call me back, when it's time for me to be supported. So we've definitely seen within that sphere leveraging more modern types of approaches that people are just expecting from a customer experience center to be used to enhance the customer experience.
So what lessons can other leaders take from that experience?
What they can take from that experience is that sticking with the old and tried and true methods may or may not necessarily be the right way to go into the future, as the customers and end users are expecting more of a more responsive or a more flexible type of customer experience interaction.
When we're dealing with tech, much like when you're in college and you're doing your labs, real world doesn't always match expectation or what the instructions say. So not every tech implementation succeeds. What are the biggest mistakes organizations make when trying to modernize their workforce experience?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that one size may not fit all. Different teams within an organization may have unique requirements that require either tailoring an existing tool or perhaps a completely different tool altogether. A platform change by itself may not be sufficient. I think a lot of times we've seen customers who just think that they made the wrong choice last time with the platform, and if they choose a different platform, that's going to make all their problems go away without really addressing the core issues that may actually cause their previous solution to fail them. I've also seen organizations consider implementation the final step of deploying new tools, and it's important to realize that they need to invest in the adoption and training to make that successful.
So if you could give some actionable advice to leaders out there, what's one immediate step they can take to assess and improve their workforce technology stack?
So I think the one thing that they can really start looking at is ask themselves whether or not they're measuring the success of their current platform. Are they measuring how much it's used? Are they measuring the right things about how much it's used? Are they measuring employee satisfaction with that? I think just even asking that question is an important step to determine whether or not they're actually getting enough information to make the right decision for where their future is going to be.
Okay. All right, let's jump into the future. What new technologies? I mean, there's a ton of them out there, but like AI assistants, immersive collaboration tools, smart analytics, what do you think is going to redefine how we work in the next few years?
One of the most future interesting areas is going to be around smart spaces and flexible spaces. So as companies start to implement their return to office, if they haven't already done so, really understanding how their space is being used is going to be important, but also the type of technology I'm putting in there. Are there other things that I could be measuring out of this space than just whether or not it's being used or not? I've got a room that's set up for supporting 10 people. Are 10 people coming into that meeting on a regular basis, into that meeting room on a regular basis, or is it 3 or 4? Do I need more smaller rooms or do I need more larger rooms?
Some more efficient space utilization type stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
More efficient space utilization. That's very important.
The pandemic obviously threw everything into a spin, kind of like the putting it on the wash cycle. And like you said, the return to office strategies of some organizations, some don't have them. Some have found that they're more efficient. They're meeting those goals, exceeding expectations by having those remote workforces. And then there are those that are, no, it's better when we're face to face. We're getting much more done because of those pre and post office meetings type of thing. So yeah, you look at kind of around the space, and some questions obviously can come up from time to time, like, what's that even used for? When was the last time anybody was ever there? Leaders need to start really taking stock of that and understanding, okay, I could save money here by shrinking this down. Or you know, if I pay for, 10,000 square feet and I only use 5, well, okay, you're paying twice as much as you need to. You know, let's shave that down a little bit. Well, let's talk about tech being that differentiator. In a competitive talent market, how can providing a better technology experience help organizations attract and retain the best talent?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that workers, by and large, want to not just feel productive, but actually be productive. I think the tools that they use, they want them to actually make their jobs easier, or at least allow them to be able to accomplish more. And I think giving the employees the autonomy they need in order to use the tools that they need to do their job is what's going to make them want to come back the next day and the next day and continue to improve the organization.
So if there was one message about workforce technology and experience you'd like leaders to take away today, what would it be?
I think the one thing that I'd like the leaders to take away is that, return to office mandates versus attracting employees back to the office is an important question to wrestle with. I think we've seen a lot of organizations who have this idea that, hey, everybody needs to return to the office. There's, no excuses or anything like that. They tend to not quite go as well as the ones who have decided to try to rebuild the office space to make it more amenable to the way that work now is.
That's awesome. I greatly appreciate your insights. And thanks for helping us understand how technology is moving us beyond emails and virtual meetings to truly empower teams. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite listening platform so you don't miss future insights. And for more expert resources on workforce technology and IT solutions, visit ironbow.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.